Hello and welcome to a special Q&A with Falkirk Chairman Gary Deans. I'm Brian Marjoribanks, a sports writer with the Scottish Daily Mail, and the club has invited me to put questions to Gary, which have been supplied to me by the fans themselves. As you're aware, Scottish football voted in April to curtail the league season early and points and final placings decided on a points per game basis. That saw Hearts, Partick Thistle and Stranraer all relegated, but Falkirk were also one of the main clubs affected. Sitting 1 point behind Raith Rovers, the decision to curtail the season early meant that Falkirk lost out on promotion by just 0.36 of a point. And if you add in since the failed bids to reconstruct the leagues, the need for social distancing when the football does return, and indeed all the uncertainty over if and when football can return in the lower leagues, there's clearly a lot for Gary to discuss here. So, Gary, shall we just get cracking with the questions?
Yeah, perfect, Brian, and thanks for doing this.
No problem at all. So first, and I'm sure a lot of fans want to know the answer to this, Gary, is when do you think Falkirk will return to playing football?
We've been having lots of calls with the SPFL and with other clubs. There was a League One call on Monday and another one, a follow-up last night, Tuesday evening. The consensus is we're going to be back playing in October. The bet thread has been penciled in for the 3rd of October. I'm pretty sure it's the 3rd, it's the first weekend in October. So the Betfred group stages will start then. These will, if the resolution gets passed, they'll go back to that. But if the resolution gets passed by the League One clubs or League One and League Two clubs, we'll be playing on the 3rd of October and the season will start on the 17th. That will be a 27-game season, so 3 games against each club. So obviously 2 away, 1 home, or vice versa, depending on what the draw is and what the league structure is, league fixtures are. I'm 95% certain that that's what's going to happen. Now, the consensus of League One and League Two is that, well, not the consensus, the shock to me in some ways, and I'll use that word, is that all clubs are saying they're going to be ready for October.
All clubs in League One and League Two?
Yeah. And that's a surprise to me. And I've told some of them it's a surprise to me. But I think there's a genuine fear. The way that the SPFL have set this out, if you do not play, if you want to go into hibernation, and that was an option, but if you don't play, you're going to be left behind. And I think there's an awful lot of clubs don't want to get left behind. No club wants to get left behind. So they're pushing themselves as hard as they can to make sure that they can play. I thought before the calls this week that what we'd end up in is a merged League One, League Two. Now, unless there's some changes, and that's where my slight doubt comes through, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have the same structure as we've currently got, which begs the question, Brian, we're back to square one. And the last 13 weeks or whatever have been wasted.
And then following on from that, Gary, when do you think crowds will be back in Falkirk Stadium? I know there's been developments in this today with announcements at government level. What's your own understanding of that?
I have no idea, is the honest answer. We're subject to Scottish Government deciding at what phase will they allow crowds back into football grounds or rugby grounds or whatever, any sports. So what the announcements today, and I've just seen some of them about cinemas and so on, different industries, and we're on the League One call on Monday. The SPFL medical director of the SFA comes on, the Neil Doncaster, Rod Petrie and so on, they're all there. They've no idea because they're speaking constantly to Scottish Government and other health authorities and all the rest of it. They're really in their hands, to be fair. So it's not a matter that football can decide for themselves. We'll be at the behest, putting plans forward to the football authorities, to the government, sorry, and government will say whether or not the plans are sufficient to allow crowds back and at what size and what scale. I think we've got these 4 phases. We're now moving into phase 2, or we're in phase 2. I think crowds will not come back until phase 4. My working assumption and what we're budgeting on that basis is that will be in January, but not before January.
Right, okay. Again, there's a few questions from fans about social distancing being followed and would the North Stand be used for home fans, but I guess you're maybe not in a position to answer that.
Well, yeah, no, we're planning. We've had a look at what the stadium capacity obviously is, and how do we spread people out as much as possible. Now, if social distancing goes down to 1 metre or 1 metre plus, as Boris Johnson announced yesterday, that makes a difference. So, can we spread fans throughout the stadium as much as we possibly can? Yeah, and when we can do so, we will do so.
Okay. The next question is that. Is Falkirk supportive of Partick and Hearts' legal challenge, and do you think it'll have much chance of it being successful?
Supporters, we're not going to back Hearts and Partick's legal challenge. This is a matter for them. I'm sympathetic to it. I had a call with a couple of club chairmen this week from the Championship, trying to suss out where things lie. To be fair, and we had a disagreement. About one in particular, about the merits of Hearts and Partick taking a legal case in the first place. My view is Scottish football had a way to be able to make sure there was no legal cases and no disadvantage and all the rest of it. And we know where we are with reconstruction. It's not to open that box again. But that was a way to be able to make sure that nobody was getting adversely affected and there would have been no legal cases. As a consequence of rejecting all these routes, Scottish football's opened itself up to legal cases, and I think that was inevitable. He disagrees with me, and that's his right. So he violently thinks that Partick and Hearts are doing the wrong thing by taking other clubs to court, effectively taking other clubs to court. If I was in their situation, I'd be doing exactly the same. So it's no different. And I completely understand why they're doing this, because it's the last card they've got to be able to play. The issue is, and some fans have asked this kind of question obliquely or directly, why are we not joining that case? Now, our position is different. We've not been relegated, and we're not suffering the same financial hit as Hearts and Partick are. Now, we were disadvantaged. We were disadvantaged by the early end of the season. We have been disadvantaged because the playoffs were cancelled. But our case is therefore a bit weaker, and quantifying the financial loss in those terms is more difficult than it would be if Hearts in Hearts or Partick's situation. The last thing I'll say on that, and I'm happy to take follow-up questions on any of these things, Brian, but the last thing I'll say on that is we've also got a duty to have a look at how do we put ourselves into the best possible place to win this league, wherever we're playing again next year. Do we spend the money on the playing squad and everything else to do with the club to make sure we've got the best possible chance, or do we spend it on lawyers? Looking at how strong a case or weak the case would be, our call is we need to concentrate on winning the league.
Okay. Following up from that, I don't know whether you agree with this or not, but why has the Falkirk board been so quiet over the past few months when the impact on the club has been so high?
I'm smiling there because honestly, I didn't think we had been quiet. I've been kind of conscious of saying too much, and some other people have accused me of saying too much. Now, in round, maybe I've said too much, and maybe the others have not been as vocal. Kieran certainly, Kieran Kazari has been saying quite a lot as well. So we're trying to balance that. So I'm not sure I would accept that we've been quiet. There's also a bit, to be fair, and I try and live by this. I find it difficult. If somebody asks me a question, I'll give them my opinion. I try and live with the adage, say something when you've got something to say. And if we've nothing to say, or there's nothing happening, but there's been a lot happening, then don't say it. But I have been on radio, we've done interviews like this, we've made statements. So if people think we've been too quiet, I'll take that on board. But other people will probably tell me to stop showing my face and shut up a bit.
Okay. How likely do you think it is that you'll see clubs going out of business in Scotland due to the lack of gate receipts and other things like that? And how well placed are Falkirk to withstand this kind of storm?
I'll take the Falkirk position first. Well placed. We've done reasonably well financially, and pretty well in the last financial year. The financial year runs to the 31st of May, so we'll be, and I'll come back to that in due course about an annual general meeting and so on. So financially, we're okay. Now, we're facing a really difficult season. So that's not to say we're sitting absolutely pretty. We're not sitting with millions in the bank. So we'll need help. And if it's all right, we'll pick that up later on as well. So we'll need help, and we'll need help from the fans, and we're thinking about different ways to be able to do that, and we'll come back to that. But we're in a position that we can weather this storm, and we'll come through this stronger than other clubs will come through. That's what we've been planning for, and that's how we're running things. Other clubs can't say what their position is, but go back to what I said earlier on. I'm kind of surprised that all the clubs are taking the stance that they are, because I think that some of them are taking a big financial gamble. That's not for me. We've got to look after ourselves, and it's for them to decide what they want to be able to go off and do. And I can completely understand in their position. They're maybe pushing it. They're maybe getting new investment. They're maybe getting people saying, "Go back you." Their fans will be backing them too. But I think there's clubs that are in a more precarious position than us. I genuinely hope that no club fails. We've all been through difficult times in Falkirk. We do not want to see other clubs suffering. I'll hesitate there. I want to see them suffer on the park. For clubs that have not supported their stance, I want to see them suffer. But I want to see them suffer because Falkirk give them a hiding, not because they're suffering financially.
Okay. With it being likely that funds will be required in the future, do the MSG have the appetite to invest further? And if they'll be looking for fan input, will shares be issued in return, or will the MSG be assuming it will be by way of donation?
The MSG, there's a bit of, we're giving something away here. We're changing the Articles of Association, which is legalese, and apologies for everybody that doesn't look at all the legal side of these kind of things. But we're changing the Articles of Association. I constantly speak to the MSG about this. And the MSG, or on a regular basis, the MSG have decided that they don't want that nomenclature to be there anymore. So the major shareholders group is removing itself from the articles if the new articles get passed, and that's subject to a vote of the shareholders. So they're supportive of that. Why? Well, these guys, I know they've come in for a lot of criticism over the years. And people have got their views. I don't want to get sucked into that, but these guys have given a lot of time, a lot of their life, and a lot of money into Falkirk. They're at a decision. They've come to a decision that it's time for them to be able to kind of pass the baton to other people, and that baton has to be in any situation passed carefully. And made sure that it's given to the right groups, the right people, the right supporters, whatever it is, right investors. So in short, that's a long answer. In short, I don't think we should be looking at them as the funder of last resort. We've all got a duty and a responsibility to back the club if it's in our ability to be able to go off and do so. So I've been working with various people and the board and people working to us in a working group about how do we address this, and how do we look for that financial cushion, muscle to be able to help us get back up through the leagues. We will be issuing shares, so we're working on that, and fans will be asked if they want to be able to buy shares in the club. So we'll be coming to fans for that financial support. It won't be a donation. If people want to donate, that's brilliant. But there will be a route for people to be able to buy shares as well.
Okay, I clears that up. Falkirk have had 3 years of very disappointing results, and despite being promised a Premiership level squad by the last manager, they're facing a second successive season in League One. What will be done differently this season to improve results and performances? My job and the board's job is to try and get things right off the park, and that includes recruitment. And Lee and David, who are going to be with us going forward, and Lee and David, we've seen a fantastic lift in morale in the club. I'm sure we would have won the league if the league could be played right through. And the last game against Wraith Rovers at home, that would have been an interesting game. But I would have backed us to be able to win the league.
So again, we'll put as much support behind them as we possibly can to win the league this season. As I said earlier on, I want to dominate. I want to see us dominate. And I'm a fan like anybody else. Once the guys cross the line, we're reliant on the players. So yeah, we try and do as best as we can to get us in the best possible chance, to give us the best possible opportunity to win as many games as possible and to win the league. But there's a line. I can't influence that past a certain stage. So we're putting plans in place. We're trying to get our recruitment right as much as and make sure that we've got the strongest possible chance of winning, or giving us the strongest possible chance of winning the league. Off the park, we need to strengthen. We need to strengthen the board. I'm going through a process of working with others to be able to do so. I've got a small group of people who are not board members acting as a kind of nominations board. Those individuals are working with us to be able to assess people coming forward, make sure that the right people for the right jobs at board level, and that will happen over the next few months. So yeah, we've had really, really hard times, really disappointing years, and I've been as disappointed as anybody else has over recent times. That you don't turn that ship quickly, but we'll turn it as quickly as we can and try and make sure that we're going in the right direction as quickly as possible.
Okay, and a wee follow up on the playing side things, Gary, if you don't mind. What kind of budget will there be for next season?
We're looking at budgets now, so we're working on the budgets, and we've got to plan both in a kind of worst case and a possible best case. We always plan a budget on the basis of we don't get extras from cup runs or transfer fees or anything like that. So we're working on the budgets as it currently stands. Now, I've said about a 27-game season, so that's 25% less than we would have in a normal season. So we're budgeting for 25% less of income coming in. And as I say, with no hospitality and so on for a period of time. So everything's going to be much, much tighter. When I go back to why do we need to be able to get fans buy-in, fans donations, fans buying shares and so on, and come on to season tickets. We need that assistance to give us the best possible chance to build that squad to be able to dominate the league. We're budgeting to be able to put a strong squad together, but our budget's going to be much, much tighter than it was in previous seasons, unless we can really get people behind us and give us the best possible chance to outcompete everybody else.
Okay. Again, on the playing side, Gary, players left at the end of June. Why was the decision taken at the end of June for players to leave?
We were in talks before shutdown about what the squad would look like in the coming season. So David and Lee had assessed who they definitely wanted and who was definitely not going to be part of the plans going forward. The guys who I'd like to thank for their contribution, and it was painful speaking to them and letting them go. But the guys who have gone or are going at the end of June just weren't part of the plans going forward. So we decided that was the right time to go to stop. We've put the core of people who we needed to do so onto an extension to the end of July. So that core that David and Lee are comfortable that's the core of who they want going forward, supplemented by new signings, which we might pick up. Their contracts, which were all finishing on the 30th of June as well, they've been extended to the 31st of July. During July, we'll work out the new contracts. Now that we almost certainly know what the season's going to look like, now we'll be in a position to put pen to paper and make sure that the contracts are being done.
Okay. Another question from a fan here is there a possibility of re-signing Declan McManus, or is this out with the realms of possibility due to financial constraints?
We're talking to Declan and others about Declan's been a fantastic player for us last season. Obviously, the number of goals he scored, but I mean the work effort, the work and the rate work effort, the rate that he applied himself to was fantastic. And actually, I'll go back to Lee and David here. I would say that they made him a better player than he was after they came in as well. They gave him a hunger and a drive, and I think we saw a much improved player, a better player as a result of playing under Lee and David. So we'd love to keep him, but other clubs, I'm sure, will want him as well. So we're in a position where we've got to be able to compete with other clubs if they want to be able to sign the Declans or anybody else's. But we are speaking to players. There's been a lot of players released by a lot of clubs. So there's a lot of players out there. We need to be careful at assembling a team who we think are capable of winning the league.
Okay. To what extent is the club's ability to recruit new players dependent on season ticket sales?
Well, I'm glad you asked about season ticket sales. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's dependent. Go back to our financials. The more money we've got in the bank, the more we can speculate on or attract the best possible player. We don't want to get into crazy contracts, and some of that's been done over years past. I've heard it being said that Falkirk were seen as a soft touch, money-wise. Perhaps that's true, perhaps it's not true. But we're not going to be going forward. We've got to make sure that the proper processes are put in place. Contracts are screwed down as much as we can possibly get them screwed down to be to our advantage, but also fair to the player. Season tickets, we've not sold any season tickets yet because we didn't know what the season was going to look like. Now that we're more or less certain what the season's going to look like, season tickets will be going on sale pretty soon. What that will look like is a 27 game, or the numbers at home. It's a 27 game season, so it might be 13, it might be 14 home games. How many of them are going to be behind closed doors? We don't know. So is this a virtual season ticket? So the pricing of it we're still working out, but that will happen. The sale will go on. These will go on sale in the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay, you've already preempted my next question, which was when season tickets are going to go on sale. Okay. But the last question here is that what would have been Falkirk's preference on when the season started and how many games there should have been? I know you're saying there's going to be a 27 game season starting in October. What would you have liked to have seen in an ideal world?
I mean, ideally, we have a normal season, and it would start in August, and everybody would be happy. Actually, one of the SPFL options or recommendations, not recommendations, suggestions that we have a 36 game season starting in August. I'm not quite sure where that was on the list because it was never practical. The Championship had already set the bar at 27 games by the time they got round to speaking to us. So October was the soonest that I thought was going to be possible. The SPFL also put out options around 18 game seasons starting in December and starting in January. I don't quite understand why December and January. To me, one of these would have been fine, but we were completely against that. Now, God forbid we've got a spike in the COVID crisis, and that might be where we end up, that we've got to be able to rejig things mid-season if that happens. But our line, and to be fair, Partick's line and a couple of other clubs was very, very firm. It had to start in October, so at the latest. We've got to where we would have wanted to get to. I've not got to where we wanted to get to in terms of league reconstruction, but that's as good as we're going to get.
Okay, well that concludes all the questions I've been sent in by the Falkirk fans, Gary. But is there anything else you'd like to say to them? Anything else you've not been asked that you would like to have to tell people?
Yeah, no, I just like, again, without sounding patronising, don't mean to. I'm hugely encouraged by the support that's out there and the support that we've had. We offered season ticket refunds, and the take up of refunds was incredibly low. And now that we recognise that people needed the money, some people needed the money back, and that was the right thing to do. But not just the fact that people trusted us with their money and let us retain that money to be able to build again for next season. Some of the messages were fantastic. And that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the people at the club. Knowing that kind of emotional support is there for us in these difficult times, and having taken a battering again as a club. And we'll do our damnedest. We'll get things wrong. Everybody gets things wrong, but we'll do our damnedest to get as many things as right as possible as we can. And if you can back us, we need your backing. To be able to get this club back to where it should be. And one of the things, people talk about what the level of ambition is. We are a club in an area, a town, and the infrastructure that we've got. We should be at the level of mid-table, at least Premier League. Why are we not equivalent to Kilmarnock or Motherwell? And as a Falkirk fan, and always have been a Falkirk fan, that really annoys me. There is no reason as to why we shouldn't be punching it that way, and certainly above others. But that's who we should be, not sitting where we are and competing at the level that we are. However, we are where we are, but collectively, with everybody's support and the fantastic numbers that come to see us and give us their money and support, we were determined to get back to that kind of level.
Okay. Gary, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for the questions.
No problem at all.